Okay, so hi, hello, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ali Whitehead, and you are so very welcome to a special webinar. And so we're going to be covering the 3 simple strategies you must implement to guarantee your team make at least 1 extra placement per month. I'm so excited to have you here, and I just know that you're going to get so much value from this free webinar to help your team to recruit more effectively. So to ensure you get the most out of the limited time that we've got available today, and I've packed a whole load in today, I really need that you are totally focused. So to make sure that you get your return on investment, your time investment that is, take yourself off to a quiet place, let your colleagues know that you're not available for the next about 45 minutes. This webinar is a gift to you with no strings and no expectations whatsoever from me. All I ask is that you give it your full attention, take as much as you can from the content, of which there is quite a lot, and make sure you have a pen and paper to scribble your ideas down on. Now, I've got a bonus for you, those of you who are attending live, so make sure that you stay to the end because I'm going to give you the opportunity of creating a plan with me specifically for your own recruitment company. And I'm also going to share my templates with you. I think I've got 2 or 3 of them on this webinar. And by the end of the webinar, I know you'll realise how valuable that will be to your company. So stick with me. Okay, so before we begin, I just wanted to thank you so much for your time and attention today. I appreciate there's many people inviting you to free teleseminars, webinars, and I just want to explain a little bit about why I believe that I'm qualified to speak on this specific topic. So about 20 years ago, gosh, it was a while, wasn't it? I entered the world of recruitment as a trainee industrial temp consultant, and that was a really tough job. It took me 3 years of blood, sweat and tears to really get to grips with how to create good and consistent results. I believe that I was probably a lot like your consultants entering the recruitment arena. I was given a cold desk, put on 3 days of training at head office, and was expected to make it work, and it was basically sink or swim. And to be honest, I probably sank a lot more often than I swam. But then something happened. I finally got it. I was able to manage my time, my candidates, my clients, my sales, my manager, and I went on to replicate this one with a commercial perm desk and then moved into retained search where using the exact same formula, I consistently build just under 750k a year. And I was able to help my team and also the whole of my region to develop their own strategy and ability to be able to do this. And that's actually what I'm going to be sharing with you today. So my path over the last 10 years has led me to work with recruitment owners just like you. I've had the pleasure of serving them in their quest for finding, skilling, retaining their top talent. Now, to help recruitment business owners looking to grow their business through their staff, just like you, I am CIP qualified and I do have an MBA. I've had the opportunity to work one-on-one with some really amazing business coaches, including Jeff Walker and including Ali Brown, and not to mention the host of sales and recruitment coaches I've had the pleasure of working alongside. And I should probably mention Nikki Coffin there at this point because she has been so fantastic and she's a pleasure to work with. Working with multi-million-dollar coaches has helped me refine and improve not only the training that I can provide to recruiters, but to show recruitment business owners how to attract, hire, and train the best talent in the market using some seriously cutting-edge techniques. 3 of which I'm going to share with you today. Now, it probably won't surprise you that many recruitment businesses are rarely able to grow their team above around 3 consultants. Now, if you are one of them, congratulations, you're in the top 10% of recruitment business owners in the UK who have been able to do this, not through lack of trying though. I speak to and consult with hundreds of business owners who desperately want to grow their firm to reach a point when they're not the main vehicle of business development and job fulfillment. Like you, they probably want to be able to stop billing and hand the baton over to good, solid, trustworthy team members, which will help them to work on their business, not necessarily in it, creating and leveraging the opportunity to exit profitably when the right time comes. But it's tough, and I know that. I know how hard it is to find the best talent most suited to your own business, and once you've got them, to ensure they're on track for the majority of the time. What I want you to know is if you've been struggling with this specific issue for a while, it's not your fault, and you are definitely, absolutely not alone. When you get the clarity that I'm going to share with you today on this call, you're going to realise that with just a few tweaks to your daily, weekly and monthly plans, your team can and will be focusing on exactly the right areas consistently, taking out that notorious yo-yo billing. Okay, so let me just push through this slide set, and we're going to explore some techniques. We can choose. I've chosen 3 of them today, which will help you to obtain the consistency that you're looking for. So the first thing we're going to look at is something which a guy called Mr. Drucker mentioned a long time ago. He's actually a management consultant, a very famous one, on what gets measured gets managed. So I'm going to help you to work out what you need to measure so that you can actually start managing it and making it work for you and your team. The second thing we're going to look at is golden KPIs, or golden tasks, if you like, and what areas, once you've worked out what you need to measure, are going to be really important to you to measure and keep in the minds of your consultants on a daily basis to ensure they are working on their KPIs and the right KPIs to work on. I often see businesses working with numerous sets of KPIs when actually they probably only need 1 or 2. So we're going to be looking at what exactly those golden KPIs will be for your businesses. And the third thing we're going to be looking at is your weekly focus and how you can spend maybe 10-20 minutes a week to really focus on your golden KPIs and how to get the best and most effective use out of your team. So without further ado, let's have a look at the first thing, which is going to be what gets measured gets managed. And we've got a picture of Mr. Drucker up here. And the first thing we're going to look at is Pareto's Law. Now, I don't know how many of you have heard about Pareto before, but it is something which I totally bang on about all the time. But Pareto's Law is probably the best and most effective way of managing your time and managing your team's time as well. But you need to be able to dig into it quite heavily to actually start using the 80-20 rule. So before we go anywhere, we need to work out what the 80-20s are in the recruitment business. But if you don't know too much about Pareto and Pareto's Law, let me just explain it briefly to you. This guy Pareto, and his name was Vilfredo Pareto, he was an economist who lived quite some time ago, 1848 to 1923. And he did a piece of work, his seminal work, which included a very little explored law then of distribution. And it later bared his name, which was called Pareto's Law, or the Pareto distribution, and most recently we call it the 80-20 principle. So this is probably what changed the way that I worked and what changed the way that my team worked as soon as I started looking at it. The mathematical formula that he used to demonstrate a grossly uneven but predictable distribution of wealth in society. 80% of the wealth and income was produced and possessed by 20% of the population. But he also applied this outside of economics, and he realized that the 80-20 law hits pretty much everything that you're looking at. For example, 80% of Pareto's garden peas were produced by 20% of the people he had planted, and that's just like one example of it. Now, Pareto's Law can be summarized as follows. 80% of the outputs result from 20% of the inputs. Or, you can put it a different way, 80% of the consequences flow from 20% of the causes. 80% of the results come from 20% of the effort and time. 80% of company profits come from 20% of the clients. We could go on and on and on looking at that 80-20 rule, and the list is infinitely long and diverse. The ratio is often skewed as well, so it can be even more severely 90-10%, 95-5%, and even 99-1%. They're not uncommon, but what you'll probably find is it's much closer to like the 80-20 mark. So probably one of the most important things to look at here is how is it going to affect you in recruitment, and how does it affect you and your team in recruitment terms. This was like a massive aha moment for me, and I'm really hoping you're going to get a couple of those throughout this particular webinar. And what I'd like to talk you through is some of the data that you can track and measure that will really help once you've discovered what 20% of your input will result in 80% of your output is. Suddenly, day plans, week plans, month plans become a complete and different thing. Now, when I first did this exercise, I was probably sort of 4 years into recruitment, and I sat down and I worked on a number of different things, and I'm actually going to share those with you today, and I'm going to share with you what I got out of it as well, and what I had changed. I completely changed the way that I worked just by adding Pareto's Law into my planning. So, data is a fabulous thing. Now, for those of you that know me, know that I'm completely process orientated, and you can track data, and data will give you an absolute and true look at what's working for you and what's worked with you in the past. So it will determine how well you do in the future, and you can use this data to be able to work on your time management, to be able to work on what actions and areas you need to work in, what you actually need to say to clients when you pick up the telephone, and this will help your team enormously. But you need to be able to track the right stuff. So what we're going to start with is what can you measure, and we're going to look at data to track if you're client hungry. So if you don't have enough clients, or you need to get a continual flow of clients coming forward to you, this historical data that you can track is going to be invaluable. Now, when I say historical data, if you've got it, fantastic. If you don't have it, now is a really good time to start tracking it. So literally just put it into what you're doing at the moment and start tracking these through. You can always do some modelling as well. So, for example, if you're starting a new desk or one of your consultancies, you can model the data that you've got for another desk, or your own data. If you've got somebody yourself or somebody that's very successful at what they do, it's worthwhile taking a look at that historical data and start modelling your new consultant or your new desk on that historical data. So, first question to ask is, where do 80% of your team's vacancies arise from? So, what I guess I'm looking at here is what is the source of this? This historical data will let you know exactly where your vacancies are coming from, and you need to track them all the way back. So if you're not tracking this already, have a look back and see where those vacancies have started from. What type of call was it that enabled that vacancy to come on board? And you will find that there is an absolute trend to this. This blew me away actually when I first started doing it, and it surprised me enormously, some of the data that I got out of this, and I'm going to share that with you later. So this gave me a massive aha, and it really helped me look at what I should be doing on a daily basis. Often I would, when I had my KPIs in front of me, I was like, right, I know I need to do this, and know I need to do this. But actually, I got a lot of my information once I started looking at things a little bit more carefully, and hopefully you'll have this information on your systems. Second one, which 20% of vacancies do your team consistently fill 80% of the time? This is going to give you exactly where they need to focus their time and energy looking for vacancies. These are actually going to give you your MPVs. For those of you who don't know what an MPV is, it's a most placeable vacancy. So where do they come from, and which ones are they consistently filling? Once they understand this, and you understand this with them, then we can spend a lot more time in the right place, getting the right vacancies on board that are easy to fill, and it will help you enormously. The next one, which 20% of their clients provide them with 80% of the revenue. So maybe go back, if you've got data for the last 6 months, a year and a half, the bigger the better, you will see a trend. And just think to yourself, what can I do with this information? For me, it's spending much more time with the clients that are giving you the best vacancies, which might be exclusive, they might be retained, or they might be, just really tight vacancies where you have a lot of control. But once you know what clients they are, then you can start really working on your account management skills and looking at the actions that you can do on a weekly basis to keep in touch with these people and make sure that they're really happy. If 80% of the vacancies are coming from these clients, then that's where you need to be spending a lot of your time, or they need to be spending a lot of their time as well, looking at exactly what they can do to make these clients ridiculously happy and not want to move. Okay, this one is a little bit more tricky, and it's what 20% of business development activity gets them 80% of their desired outcomes, or your desired outcomes. Now for me, desired outcomes, I guess, are going to be vacancies, and they're going to be placements. So what 20% of business development activity gets them the majority of these. This is true, hard facts, and there's no presuming here. This is all about looking at true historical data, and it's incredibly powerful when we start looking at something which you're not presuming something. So, how can I put it? For example, some clients might have, or you may have, a KPI which says, okay, well, you need to do 100 calls a week, 100 business development calls a week, and you should get X amount of vacancies out of it. But actually, if you look back and you're tracking exactly where both your placements and your vacancies have come from, you're going to be able to pinpoint exactly where to spend that time most efficiently. And not only... I guess not even efficiency, it's being as effective as you possibly can in the short time span that you've got. And effective over efficient is always going to be that much better. So it's about working smarter, basically. So once you have got that and you've got that information, then we can start adjusting the time spent on these to 80% of your time being spent, or your team's time being spent on the right things, instead of faffing around with some of the things that you think might have had results but actually didn't. Now, I'm going to share with you in a couple of slides' time exactly what I found out from looking at my data and how it completely changed the way that I ended up doing my business. It actually was able, over 2 years, I was able to put 200k onto my bottom line just by literally changing the way that I worked and my time management to ensure that I was looking at and doing the right things. So let's move on to data to track if you're candidate hungry. And I guess this means if you don't have enough candidates and you want to, you've got job roles coming out of your bottom, but not enough candidates to fill them. So we need to have a look at some of the data. And the first thing that I would start looking at and have looked at is, where do 80% of your team's placed candidates come from? Now, this is where they actually originate from. Do they come from job boards? Are they coming from CV searching? Are they coming from your database? And actually, for me, this was a massive change around in what I was doing, because I honestly did think that the majority of my candidates were coming through job boards. And as I sat down and looked back on my data, I realised that they just weren't. They were coming from a completely different area, which I hadn't even picked up. And I was pretty good at this. So for me, this was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. Very, very interesting as well, because it will look at the way that you're spending, the job boards that you're spending them on, and are they the right ones for you. So this is going to be really, really good data for you guys to look at as managers. Second one, with 20% of candidates do your team consistently place 80% of the time. With a massive caveat to this, these are their MPCs. Now, MPC is a most placeable candidate. Once you have worked out who that candidate is, and an MPC is a candidate that, you know, once you've got them on board, you can place them 100 times over. But often it's really difficult to see the wood through the trees and actually understand who your MPCs are. So for me, looking at this and going back in your historical data and looking at which 20% of candidates are consistently placed, you will find your MPC and they're just sitting there staring at you, which is absolutely amazing to find that. Now, you can get new data here. For example, if you're starting a new desk or you're starting a new business, you might need to start from scratch on your data. But do start tracking it immediately. So if you are starting a new desk, then this is stuff that you want to be tracking without any doubt whatsoever. Okay, next one, which 20% of candidates sourcing activities are providing them with 80% of their candidates. So exactly where are the candidates coming from? And as I said, for me, this was really changed the way that I worked, because my candidate sourcing activities just took an about turn. It's like being slapped on the forehead, and I was like, oh Jesus. It does change the way that you work. I did an awful lot of candidate sourcing, thinking I was doing it the right way, but actually I wasn't. What I was spending a lot of time on, which was active candidates, was getting me such a small return, and I didn't even realise it. The candidates that I was placing were headhunted candidates or candidates that come through other candidates, and I knew them, and they knew me. You know, they were in my network, and actually, I was spending probably about 80% of my candidate sourcing time trying to source cold candidates, which obviously wasn't working for me. So I completely took it out of what I was doing. Completely. I didn't even go looking for them. I didn't put any ads out or anything. And I started making more placements, which surprised me enormously. And I'm going to show you more about that very shortly. Okay, so what 20% of candidate placement activities, for example, most placeable candidate emails, marketing calls, and CV spec calls, gets them 80% of their interviews. So you're tracking the same type of thing here. But honing in on the best ways to consistently spend your time on, the best actions to spend your time on, will save an enormous amount of time in the long run and really free up their time to do the most important things. And every day and every week I had basically had golden tasks which I knew I had to complete to be able to do my job as effectively as I possibly could. So what I think about here is you need to go back and find this data. It might be a little bit skewed. As I say, you might get 90, 10%, 95, 5%, possibly 85, 15%, something like that. But you will get a great big arrow pointing to showing you exactly what you need to be doing more often than you're currently doing, or more often than your team is currently doing it. And what it will also show you is that things that you don't need to be doing on a regular basis that you're probably doing, which literally wastes time. Now, it will turn time management for you on your head if you take this seriously and you go out and you start having a look at this data. And actually, sometimes it's a little bit of a it's slightly scary as well when you start looking at this and start thinking, actually, you know, I'm spending all of my time on these job boards, or I'm looking for these CVs, and I'm spending at least sort of 10-15 minutes with each of these candidates that I'm not ending up placing, and it's not going anywhere. If you took that completely out of what you or your team are doing on a daily basis or a weekly basis, you will suddenly find that you've got, you know, 4, possibly even 8 hours left to fill it with the right things. So have a good think about this and think about where you can get this information from, because it's absolutely invaluable. Now, Just before we go on a little further, I want to talk to you about being effective versus being efficient. Now, effectiveness is doing things that get you or your team closer to their goals. And the whole idea with the 80-20 is being as effective as possible, not efficient, effective. Efficiency is performing a given task, whether it's important or not, in the most economical manner possible. Being efficient without regard to effectiveness is basically the default mode of the universe, which is a bit mental. Now, I would consider the best door-to-door salesperson efficient. That is, they're refined and they're excellent at selling door-to-door without wasting any time. But it's utterly ineffective. He or she would sell more using a better vehicle, such as email or direct mail, because you get a much better result from it. Now, this is also true for the person, and you'll recognise this, who checks emails 30 times per day, and they've got a really lovely elaborate system of folder rules and sophisticated techniques for ensuring that each of those 30 brain farts moves as quickly as possible. Now, I was also very good at this. It is efficient on some sort of weird and perverse level, but far from effective. So 2 things that you want to keep in mind with that. Number 1, doing something important well does not make it, doing something unimportant and doing it well does not make it important, which is really interesting. And 2, requiring a lot of time does not make a task important. So what you do is infinitely more important than how you do it. Efficiency is still important, but it's useless unless it's applied to the right things, which the 80-20 rule will absolutely and totally give you. Now, if you're in any doubt at all, or you want to start a new market, you want to have a look at something different, or you don't have any historical data that you can work with, I suggest that you look at modelling success. Now, the nice and simple way to model success is to find somebody in your business who is already good at what they do. So they're already effective, and they're doing their job well. And I would use their historical data or their aha moments to model their success. And I'm going to share some with you today. Now, please remember, if anything, take out anything of this, just take the top 20% of what I'm telling you and put it into your business, because you only get a couple of moments here which you think, right, okay, that sounds like a really good idea, but it might not work for your business. So it's always worth looking at your own historical data to be able to determine the results. But I'm going to share with you some of mine. So some of my aha moments. Okay. I can't even remember what year it was. I was in about year 5, I think, of my recruitment career. And I reached a point where I couldn't have billed anymore, even if I'd wanted to. I was too time challenged to do it. I was working late, so I was coming in early. And I had to sit down and think, right, okay, what the hell am I going to do to be able to take myself up another billing level if that's what I want to do, which I absolutely did. So I sat down and I had a look at my data, and I was able to put together about 3 years worth of data, which was all in spreadsheets back then, but should be much easier for you to get hold of. Now, one of my first aha moments was that 80% of my placements came from candidate referrals and candidates in my network. Now, this was huge for me. I was using ads, job boards, CV searching, the whole shebang. I worked for a deco. We spent a lot of money on this on a weekly, monthly basis. But I actually had to sit down and think, right, my candidates aren't coming from that particular source. They're coming from somewhere different. So I took that out of what I was doing on a daily basis. I took it out completely, actually. And I replaced it with trying to get more candidate referrals and talking to more candidates in my network and getting them more engaged with me and with what I was doing. That took me up, I can't even put a price on it, but probably about 100 grand a year. And year 2, when I started using my data a lot more effectively, it took me up by 200 grand. So this is how important it is. I didn't need the job boards. They were expensive. and I was able to spend my time on much more effective and efficient even money-making activities. This one was massive. 80% of my new clients came from candidate information when I interviewed them. Now, I was spending a whole heap of time chasing leads, as I'm sure that you guys are. But when I look back on my data, only a very small amount of my placements came from those leads that I was chasing. Eventually, they came to me, but in a very different manner, which I'll go through with you in a moment. But 80% of my new clients came from candidate information when I interviewed them. So what I tended to do was spend a lot more time with my candidates, interviewing my candidates, and making sure that I put very specific questions in there that would allow me to be able to talk to new clients. Now, they often came in referral form or reference form. I did a lot of referencing, and it really helped me out, and I was able to speak to a lot more clients that way and start touching them, if you like. Now, the 20% of calls I made to clients resulted in 80% of new vacancies were candidate marketing calls. So I don't know how you guys feel about cold calling. I'm not a big cold calling fan, but obviously I did need to do it, and it was part of my KPI set. One of my KPI set was, you need to make X number of cold calls a week. Now, I sat down and worked out that very, very few of my vacancies that were coming into me were actually from cold calls. They were from candidate marketing calls, but they weren't from the very first call. So the very first call I made with them, although it was cold, I got very little from it. It was when I went through and started literally getting them involved in a relationship with me and building up that relationship building process. I got a lot more from that. But the very first vehicle that I used was going in with a most placeable candidate, an MPC, and getting them involved in a conversation with me, whether they wanted that candidate or not, which often they didn't. So the 20% of calls I made to clients, which resulted in 80% of new vacancies, were candidate marketing calls, but only 20% of those actually interviewed them or took the candidate on at that particular time, which is a very small percentage. I mean, it was a nice percentage to have, but it was very small. So I had to go through a touch process with them for me to be able to get them in a position where they'd buy from me, basically. Another aha moment that I had when looking at my data was that 80% of my vacancies came from clients who had worked with me for over 1 year. And although this part wasn't tracked, I wish I had, I'd bet that filling those vacancies took me about 20% of the time it took to fill the ad hoc ones, the ones that I didn't know that well. So this gave me a really good indication that I really had to up my my account management skills more than anything. And start looking at ways of really pleasing those clients and how to keep them on board. So I literally changed the way that I was selling. Now, there's a very specific way that you can do this with your consultants. So I'm going to walk you through it now. And we're going to make your consultants lean, mean consultants, or lean, mean time machines, I like to put it. So the first thing that you can do, which will help you immediately, is start tracking your data, or if you already have data, analyze it and work out your golden KPIs, which I'm going to show you how to do in a moment. So go back and have a look at these questions again. In fact, I can do it for you, she says. Look at these questions and start questioning them through with your consultants. Maybe give it to them as a project and find out exactly where your candidates are coming from, where your results are being achieved 80% of the time. What I'm going to suggest that they do once you have got this information, you know where you're going to be most effective. Don't forget about efficiency, where you're going to be most effective, so where that time needs to be spent on a daily basis. Look at where they are now. So the easiest way to look at where they are now is by doing a time analysis exercise. Now, I have got one here and you're welcome to it. So what I'll do is at the end of the webinar, when I post up the recording, I'll post up this as a PDF for you as well. But I'm just going to come out of my screen here. Hope I can get back to it. And have a look at what I've got here, which is a 3-day, 15-minute activity inventory. So this is a bit of a pain in the arse. I will warn you of that now, and it drives you slightly crazy. But it is absolutely eye-opening on where you spend your time. It's a little bit scary, and sometimes you or your consultants will need to take it on the chin. But it's really worth doing. So take 3 days out of their normal working life. Nothing changes, okay? Nothing at all. This is where you start. And you start analysing exactly what you've done in the last 15 minutes. Now, in my experience, the easiest way to do this is by getting your phone, your mobile phone, and literally putting a timer on every 15 minutes and then popping something in. It doesn't have to be anything too in depth or anything, but you know, if maybe at 9:30 you're speaking to candidates, maybe for 15 minutes spoke to one candidate about role, spoke to 2 candidates about role, that type of thing needs to go in there. Now, once you have got that in there, over 3 days, and as I say, you need to take it on the chin a little bit, or your consultants will, you can start looking at what you actually need to be doing against what you're doing right now, or what they are doing right now. So if right now they're spending a lot of time and maybe they're over-resourcing roles, or they're spending too much time looking at CVs, I used to spend an awful lot of time on making CVs look nice, or changing CVs around, taking off contact addresses and that type of thing. And it actually took my eye completely off the ball. So when I started looking at it, thinking, actually, I could spend a whole afternoon just manipulating CVs without any problem whatsoever. But once I realised that I was doing that, I was taking up 4 hours of my time doing something which really doesn't need to be done, then I was able to replace it with some of the things that really did need to be done, which were doing the candidate interviews and getting client names from a candidate and that type of thing. So have a look at doing this 3-day analysis, and you will get some massive information from this. And I can't recommend it enough. This literally turns time management on its head. And it will show you exactly where the time is being spent and why it's not being spent as effectively as possible. Right, let me see if I can get my slide set back. Hold on. Now, once you have got that time analysis done, and as I say, it takes about 3 days, but it will give you some invaluable data, start changing some things around and replace the 80% of non-revenue generating activities that you or your consultants are doing, which will come out of this. I've got absolutely no doubt whatsoever. So replace them with the top 20% that will get your consultants the results that you want. And that's from the stuff that we've gone through already. So if they are looking for more candidates or more clients, get them to answer those questions, and then start spending their time on activities to allow them to get them there. You could possibly get rid of 80% of the non-revenue generating activities, like over-resourcing, CV changing, going onto LinkedIn, working on social media that doesn't need to be done necessarily right that moment. And you will end up getting better results and outcomes by popping in some of the top things that will actually generate revenue and generate money. These are your golden tasks. And when we look at golden KPIs, that will also really help you with those golden tasks. Last one here. If the team struggle with any of the above, and they will, without any doubt, some questions that you can ask are these. Now, they're a little bit extreme, but they really work. So if they're struggling and they're saying, okay, well, tell you what, I need to get in contact with that client to sort that out. I need to resource for this role. I've got a candidate that's gone AWOL, so I need to get hold of them. I need to do some business development and get on the phones and start trying to generate some more vacancies, because I'm vacancy shy at the moment. Get them to sit down and have a think about it and ask some of these questions, all of them if you want to, and coach them through their MIT. So their MIT is the most important thing, and you should get the most important thing from these questions. So if you had a heart attack and had to work only 2 hours per week, what specific tasks would you do? As I said, it's extreme, but it will really help them to discover exactly what money-making activities they can do and take out a whole load of stuff which they don't need to do. To counter the seemingly urgent, now this is a little bit of procrastination stuff which comes in here, and I see it all the time. I see it in myself all the time as well. Ask yourself or ask them, what will happen if I don't do this, and is it worth putting off the important to get it done? And every time that you go down this route, or your team goes down the route of starting to do things which they need to be done, but they actually stop you doing the most important things, ask this question, and then if it say, well, no, it's not worth putting it off, get it to the end of your to-do list, or put it on for tomorrow or something, and it will help you immediately, and it will help you exponentially. Nice question here. What one thing can you do today which will have a high impact on your goal? We need to have a goal first, but if their goal over that week is to achieve 3 first interviews, then what one thing can you do today that will ensure that you get at least one of those interviews in place? And that will help you coach and manage them into where they need to be. Now, if they struggle with this, and they will, ask them to look at each of their actions in turn and ask, if this is the only thing I accomplish today, will I be satisfied with what I've done today? And if the answer is no, then it's not big enough, and they need to move on to something much more effective. Okay, so that's how you start getting your consultants into being lean, mean time machines. But what I wanted to talk to you about next is KPIs. KPIs are, it's really interesting actually, because a lot of the people that our business owners now have been builders themselves, and they've come from a system where they've probably been KPI'd up to the hilt, and come out and go, right, I'm never working with KPIs again. And you know what? I completely appreciate that, because I do something very similar. But actually, KPIs are your friend, and they're one of the things that will really help you and your team to be able to be successful and replicate success as well. So you do not have to have like a list of 20 KPIs that they need to achieve. If you don't want to go down that route, you really don't have to. But putting some KPIs in place, it can be very, very effective for you. Now, if you've got KPIs in place at the moment and they haven't come from historical data, look at them, because they might not be true and right. So look at your historical data once, and this is a nice way of doing it. Ask your team, or think about for them, what do they need to achieve financially per month? So what is their financial goal for a month? It's good to have a financial goal, but it won't necessarily mean that they get there. Just having that financial goal and knowing that they need to achieve it probably isn't enough for them. Work out what their average placement fee is. So look at the work they've done over the last 6 months to a year. Total up the total amount that's billed, and divide it by the amount of vacancies, and that will give you their average placement fee. So then work out how many placements they need to fill per month. So if their average placement fee is 5k per placement, and you know that you want them to achieve 10k per month, then nice and simple on that one, they need 2 placements to fill it per month, which is pretty simple. And this is where your ratios come in. I don't know if you're used to working with ratios, but these will be your lifesaver. And these come from your historical data as well. So what is their interview to placement ratio? So if their interview to placement ratio, they need to have, let's say, 5 interviews to achieve 1 placement. That's a 5 to 1 interview to placement ratio, which is nice and simple. Now, if it is above this, you might want to look at whether it's a skill issue. So have they got the skills to be able to get those interviews in, recognise what a good candidate looks like, or what a good job role looks like, or is it actually a will issue, so skill or will. If it's above 5 to 1, I would consider it a skill issue, but possibly, have they got the motivation to be able to get the right candidates into the right roles. Then have a look at what their CV to interview ratio is. And again, if it's above 3 CVs to 1 interview, consider whether it's a skill issue or a will issue. And the way that you coach and handle that, and mentor it and train it, will be different depending on whether it's a skill or a will issue. If that is confusing for you at all, just let me know. And I will spend some time with you on how to discover whether something is a skill or a will issue. Now, this will give you probably 2 sets of absolute golden KPIs, which is possibly all you need in your business. So how many interviews they need per week to achieve their financial goal per month. Now, this is an absolute and complete golden key performance indicator, KPI, and it's an action KPI. You'll notice that it's not a figure-based or a financial KPI at all. It's an action figure. And this is where you can start to really start managing their time and be able to really work with them on getting those interviews in. The reason I like first interviews, or even interviews in general, the reason I like this is because it absolutely determines an outcome. The more interviews, good structured interviews that you have with candidates that are well placed, and you've been able to work out what their skill sets are, what their behavioural issues are, and they're placed in the right roles. The more interviews you've got, the likelihood is you're going to make more placements. Now, take the historical data and use that as a really good key on what to look at moving forwards. And once you have got that, then you can start working with them on a weekly plan. So this is how you can manage those golden KPIs. This is the most sensible way of doing it. There are loads of different ways, but for me this has always worked enormously well. So every Friday, your consultant will complete a weekly accountability form. The likelihood is you've got one of these in place, but I do have one if you haven't. And actually, once I finish this little bit of slide set here, I will take you into it and show you one which I use, which works really, really well. You're going to be looking at and spending a lot of time on the 3 most important things for next week to allow you to monitor, manage, and motivate them on a Monday morning. Lots of M's there. So when we're talking about the 3 most important things, look at that golden KPI, and if you know and they know that to be able to hit their financial target, they have to achieve 4 interviews next week or the week after. If they're not already in, then that's when you start really pushing their time onto actioning to get those interviews. And that's what the most important thing will be for them that week. If they don't get those interviews in, they're not going to make the placements. It's as simple as that. So try and align them with their values as well. But at this point on a Monday morning, if one of your golden KPIs is you must get 4 interviews and you've only got 3, the very first and only thing that they do, they drop everything to get that interview in place. And you can help them by monitoring and managing it on a Monday morning. And then when it comes to a Wednesday and you're looking at the week after, you can really effectively course correct them where you need to. So if for the next week you've only got 3 interviews and you need 4, then again, the most important thing is to get that first interview in and to find that candidate from somewhere, or to find that job role from somewhere, to make sure that they achieve their 4 interviews that they need to for next week. Now, if they've been faffing around or over-resourcing a role and it's not working out, they can't find the right candidates, this is a good time for you to jump in and course correct where needed. But you need to be very, very specific and you need to focus on action. So get them to get a list of candidates who would be good for that role. Name those candidates to you and explain to you why they're not in for that particular role, or if they are in for that particular role, are there any other candidates that they know or that you can speak to be able to make sure you fill that extra interview slot for next week. And it needs to be very specific. So talk names, talk companies, talk times, anything you can do to make it seem as real as possible and to help them to course correct where they haven't put this right at the top of their to-do list, the most important thing, which it absolutely is. And then on a Friday, you want to look back at that week and give them a little bit of motivation for the week coming. And a nice way of doing that is by looking at what they've achieved for that week and what they can achieve going forwards. Now, let me just go quickly into the weekly accountability that I've got here. Now, I use this all the time. I've got a group of consultants which use this. I've got a group of managers which use this. So very quickly I'll go through it with you. And in fact, I'll go through the most important things on it for me. The first one is, what have been your greatest accomplishments for this week? Really good, and keeps people on the ball and keeps them motivated, and they start really understanding what it is that they're doing that is working and actually what's not working. So if we come down to here, what has been the biggest challenge and what has been your biggest aha or insight this week, that will help people to be able to self-coach themselves forward and stop making some of the mistakes that they are making. It's usually in time management, and some of their ahas will be, oh my god, if I pick up the phone and actually speak to candidates, I tend to get a lot from it. There are also other things on here which are important. And then the very last thing on here are, what are your 3 most important results for the coming week? And that might be to get 5 first interviews and to get, 15 CVs out for a particular role. Whatever it might be, it needs to be on here. It needs to be right up there in the focus. So 10 minutes on a Monday morning, you can go through that with them and just make a note of what the most important things are. 10 minutes on a Wednesday to be able to look at and make sure they're still focused on those areas, on those most important things. And if they're not, you can help course correct it and be very specific in what you do. And on a Friday, review what's happened in that week. A nice bit of motivation, and seeing them develop and move forward from it is always incredibly helpful. So each meeting really shouldn't take any more than about 10 minutes. So 20 minutes of your time with that consultant is 20 minutes incredibly well spent. Okay, so we have covered 3 areas today, which are what's get measured, get managed. So look at your data, the golden KPIs and how you can work that out from your ratios, and then how to keep a real track on your weekly focus. Now, if you have got any questions at all about that, feel absolutely free to email me. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it without any problem whatsoever. Also, if you've got any questions now, I'm more than happy to look at your questions on here, so type them in if you want to. You're more than welcome to. So, just before you go, I said that I would offer you some time to spend with me. But the 3 simple steps to increase consistency and decrease your yo-yo billing, which this will absolutely do without any doubt whatsoever, is really simple. If you do any of these things individually, you're going to get an increase in billing without any doubt whatsoever in my mind whatsoever. Put them together and the results, they're going to be shockingly positive for you. So if you actually just do one of these things, I spend 20 minutes a week on their 3 MITs, work out your consultant's 80-20 ratios, you could easily be looking at least one extra placement per consultant per month. And I would eat my hat if that doesn't happen. But there is a problem with that. Where do you start? Each of the 3 strategies rely on another, and often it's really hard to work out whether it's a skill or whether it's a will issue. How do you know where to begin? How do you know which one it is? And what needs working on first before you implement that strategy? So, some good news. You probably have some of the strategies already in place, and hats off to you, brilliant. They might just need tweaking. It might take 10 minutes to tweak them, or it could take a couple of weeks or months to get it exactly right via trial and error, as I did. So I'd like to save you a whole heap of time, energy and hassle by consulting with you privately on a billing strategy call, which is completely free. So I'd like to take out all the guesswork, all the pitfalls, and remove the time that you'd waste going down blind alleys by yourself. I want to make it really easy for you to implement these steps, I really do, in your own business, nice and quickly, to get the same results that a lot of my private clients are getting as quickly as possible. So I'm going to offer you a strategy call, and on this call we can spend 45 minutes and identify all the things that have held you back and prevented you and your team from achieving consistency, and we're going to solve each one of these problems. We're going to resolve them once and for all, so by the end of the session you're totally freed up with a clear and exact plan on how to help your own consultants. Any of the things that have stopped you in the past, they're not going to be an issue anymore. And just imagine how you're going to feel. Imagine how great it's going to be able to understand and know whether it's a will or a skill issue and what you can do about it. Now, one thing you need to know about these strategy sessions or these strategy calls, this one's on me, it's totally free. Now, as much as I would love to offer this 45-minute one-on-one call to each and every one of you, and there's over 100 of you on this call today, to know your consultant issues, I just can't. So I'm only making this available to the first 10 of you who do actually meet my criteria. And yes, I've got strict criteria. I need to know that before we jump on the phone that you're motivated and serious about growing your business for your team, and you want to use the strategy we put together, or my time and your time is going to be wasted. You're going to need to fill out an application form. It'll take you literally 2 minutes, and if you email me at that address or email me back on any of the addresses that has been sent through to you for this particular webinar, you should be able to get through to me quite quickly. You snooze, you lose on this one. So if you're thinking, oh, that wouldn't work in my company, or I'm not too sure about implementing that bit, or I don't have time to spend on that area, then you're exactly the person who should apply for one of these sessions. Because I can show you how to put a simple strategy into your business and stop yo-yo billing completely for good, no matter what your niche, your sector, or your experience. So this is what you need to do. Email me at this address or return one of my emails, and I'll send you a really short questionnaire, and then we'll get back to you and sit you in for your strategy session. I hope you've got enough out of today. As I say, if you've got any questions at all, please do email me. I'll be more than happy to answer them. And what I will do over the next couple of days is I will get the slides set up for you. I'll get the recording ready for you, and also the 2 documents that we've covered, which is your time analysis and your weekly accountability sheets, up on that particular webpage for you as well. I just wanted to thank you very much for your time today. I do really appreciate it, and I hope you got a whole load out of it, and good luck. Let me know how you get on. Really good spending time with you today, and I look forward to seeing you in the future. Do take care. Bye now.